Hello and welcome to the Modern Compliance Podcast, the podcast where we talk about hot topics in the compliance industry and we share stories of other compliance experts who are going through the exact same things as you. So let's see what today's hot topic is. Hello and welcome to the Modern Compliance Podcast. Today I'm joined by a guest I'm very excited to chat with, Jim Whatmore, CEO of field service management software Joblogic. Jim has scaled his company back from humble beginnings in 2013 when he took the helm to now when they're pursuing an AI-centric roadmap following some significant investment. In this episode, we'll be discussing how the field service management industry is changing and how Joblogic is evolving with the advances in technology. Before we get to that though, Jim, tell me, for the people listening, what is field service management? Who do you help and what problems do you solve?
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for the intro. Field service management is a software platform for companies that do service and maintenance in buildings. We've got a cross-section of customers doing both commercial and residential, probably more biased to commercial service and maintenance. And the software really runs their operation, back office, mobile, and connects their customers together in a single platform. Our customers tend to be doing a higher volume of lower value jobs. So they do a lot of service and maintenance as well as installation. And our software connected up to a finance package pretty much runs their business.
So it's really managing their entire operations, really, like from kind of scheduling all the way through to delivery?
Yeah, from inquiry to quote to job creation, planning, scheduling, job costing, invoicing. And obviously in that journey, pushing that job out to a mobile app so that engineers don't have to use paper anymore or come to the office as frequently.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's something that we hear about a lot through our own software. You know, a lot of our clients also use Joblogic, and I hear about how great it is. I think I'd like to just chat a little bit today about what's really going on out there in the industry. So I know you work with thousands of service businesses across different trades, Jim, and I feel like you're probably on the front row seat to hear what's actually happening on the ground. I'm curious about what you're seeing. When you talk to business owners right now, what's the frustration you're hearing the most often?
One of the biggest challenges for the industry right now is a labour shortage. So a skilled labour shortage of engineers in the field that are able to do installation, service and maintenance. It's a common theme across all of the verticals in building services. So I think you've got probably a lot of engineers in the age cohort north of 45 years old, where they could be coming towards retirement age, and I'm not sure that's being replenished at the lower end, at the younger age cohort. So there's a challenge there in terms of the availability of skilled labour to get work done, which obviously is a big topic for a lot of our customers. And then the other things that we see are potentially admin heavy back offices where there's opportunities to grow a bit leaner and to improve margin. So it's a price sensitive industry, and the more you can do to alleviate back office cost, the better for the customers in terms of their profit profile.
So do you think the shape of companies has changed over the years, Jim? Like companies doing less admin and relying more on tech? What does that look like in the real world?
They're trying to. I think it's one of these things that if you don't have a good platform from a reporting perspective, there's a tendency to throw people at an issue and to try and solve the ability to scale through a brute force approach. And if you wind the clock back to pre-software days, really, you had a lot of engineers that were coming into offices to pick up jobs and then go back into the field, which was really inefficient, filling out manual job sheets, and that then had an impact on cash flow, the ability to return those job sheets efficiently to the office for the contractor to bill the customer for the work. We've done a lot of work around that, obviously, with creating Joblogic and alleviating the mobile manual element of it, but there's still a lot of opportunity from a back office perspective for these companies to grow leaner.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got a sort of anecdotal example of sort of chatting to my accountant. He said a lot of companies used to be like pyramids, you know, a lot of the admin sort of people at the bottom, or the sort of new up and coming labor was sort of doing the sort of manual and the data entry, you know, the sort of not low value tasks, but they were kind of feeding into that sort of top management structure. He says nowadays it's kind of the other way around. You've got like kind of more heavy on the top and less on the bottom because a lot of those tasks can be automated and what have you. What's something in the industry that you come across where you think, like, why are we still doing it like that?
Yeah, I think there's more opportunity for being more efficient in the back office, as you've said, that there are many repeatable, predictable tasks, and agentic and the rise of AI gives us a huge opportunity to do that in context to the workflows that these customers are actually carrying out. Sometimes they can be complex workflows, so it can be difficult to solve that without a real embrace of best practice. And AI gives you an opportunity to do that and use a cheat code in a way to achieve that. So that's an exciting opportunity. I also think in terms of the overall industry, I'm a little bit surprised about the speed or the lack of speed on predictive maintenance and maintenance suppression. That's something with the available technology that I thought would have gone a bit faster than it actually has. I think there's reasons for that, real world reasons around the quality of asset data in buildings and the multiple applications there are for things like IoT sensors and multiple BMS systems that don't necessarily speak the same language. So there's reasons for it, but I'm surprised maintenance suppression and predictive maintenance hasn't gone a bit faster than what it has, and we're still really doing the traditional planned preventative maintenance and reactive maintenance that we've always done.
Yeah. Where did you think it would be by now, out of interest? Or what did you think that there would just be more connectivity throughout different systems?
Yeah, and it might have been a bit of naivety on my part when I first saw the available tech and the light bulb comes on and you think we can connect all of these systems together and make building smart. So I thought we'd just be probably further down that track with less preventative maintenance going on because we've got more feedback with assets calling home and saying, I'm going to fail in a couple of weeks' time and, therefore get this part out to me before I fail and things like that. But it's working. There's a lot of good companies doing great work in the space. But I think I just expected it to be a little bit further ahead than what it is.
Yeah. I was chatting to a chap called Nathan Wood. He's sort of big in the air quality side of things. And he says that, you have these indoor air quality meters now that can kind of communicate and control the fans, so if there's too much moisture in the air, they can sort of run the fans longer and stuff like that. So I kind of feel like we're almost at the beginning of something there.
Yeah, I know Nathan. He's a great guy. He's done a lot of good work championing indoor air quality. I think he's done a lot of work with the Building Engineering Services Association. So yeah, he's definitely somebody that's close to that and the emerging tech around it.
Yeah. Do you think the pain points, Jim, are different across the different trades? So what we're currently kind of seeing with the frustrations in the industry, or are the same core problems coming up time and time again?
Generally, I think it's the same problems. So it's an interesting question because we took the firm decision that we would remain fairly trade agnostic within building services. And we identified that a back office sending a job to an engineer completing a workflow may be accompanied by compliance certification, service checklists. That workflow is very similar across trades. What really differs is the nature of the information and perhaps the criticality of the information that the engineers collect in the field. So when I talked at the top about skilled engineer shortage, I think that applies across all verticals. And when I talk about admin heavy back offices, I think that also applies across verticals as well. And those seem to be the two major challenges for the industry.
Yeah, I often see there being like a skills or brain drain sort of issue in the industries that we work in. So it's interesting to hear that you see that as well in the sort of trade side of things. So I've always liked a good transformation story, Jim, that before and after shift that you see when a company starts using technology and people can get back to doing the work that they enjoy, the skilled work that they're good at. I'm sure it's the same for your customers too. Can you paint a bit of a picture for me, like what is life like before and after someone uses Joblogic for the first time?
I suppose it in a way it depends where they've come from. So if you wind the clock back 10 years, a lot of the new business that we would have done would be taking people from manual systems with a sprinkling of Excel. So if you look at that scenario, the efficiency that you can bring to a business that's operating a semi-manual system is incredible very quickly, because straight away you're deploying jobs to engineers in the field. They're producing what used to be paperwork digitally. that information's coming back in real time. So it has a massive impact on comms with their engineers, comms with their customers in terms of what are we doing in real time. And then also the ability to invoice much more quickly, because they can be confident that they've got all of their compliance and job sheets all lined up ready to invoice. If you take a different scenario where, and which is more common now, that there's an incumbent software provider there, you are looking at potentially sometimes desktop to cloud, which still happens. So you've got many software vendors that are still on desktop systems, and customers move from those systems to cloud, and they get the benefit of remote working for their back office, which is commonplace now. Obviously, since COVID, we've got a hybrid model of working for many industries. So the ability to access their data remotely from any device has been a huge win for those customers. And over the years, we got to the cloud fairly quickly relative to the competition, and so we've had the benefit of being able to increase our feature set on a true cloud system. So sometimes we're plugging gaps for those where we're replacing incumbent systems, where there's a critical part of their workflow which was previously manual or handled outside of their system. I think the last thing is the ability to integrate. So with a modern API that Joblogic has, it's far easier nowadays to implement with third-party systems, whether that's their financial package. In many cases, a lot of our customers have an admin burden where they're trying to update multiple portals on behalf of their customers, perhaps CAFM systems or other third-party ERP systems. So I think we've done a good job at creating an ecosystem where a lot of that admin burden is relieved, because we've got an integration to the systems that they're having to update on a daily basis.
Yeah. So just to unpick what you've just said, coming from nothing or Excel to software is a big jump. If they're coming from an incumbent, it's other sort of maybe smaller issues that they might not be aware of in the business. I guess a lot of these little jobs that we do, we don't necessarily charge for them. The sort of 5 minutes entering data here and transferring it there. So that's the problem you're solving, is to sort of link those things up together.
Yeah, ultimately to make the operation more efficient, particularly in the field. So with things like dynamic scheduling, we can get engineers doing more jobs per day, which is a big win, especially as I framed it at the start with an engineer shortage. It's difficult to go and recruit skilled engineers to increase your coverage. So if we can get engineers more productive, give them better information at a job so they spend less time doing admin whilst they're on site, give them the history of a site straight away, a history of an asset, and helping on the scheduling side so that they can physically get more jobs done per day and reduce travel time.
Yeah, I love that as a goal, do more with less. When you meet with one of your top performing customers, Jim, what is it you find that they're doing differently? What does it take to become a top 1% Joblogic user?
Some of it is to do with their size and their ability to implement software platforms really well. So some of our bigger customers do have an advantage over the smaller customers in that case. What I see in terms of top performance is they've maximized their engineer to back office ratio. So they're operating as lean as possible, but still delivering great service to the end customer, still providing an excellent installation service and maintenance service. And some of the ways that they've achieved that with our best performing customers is that they've adopted a best practice and playbooks for using our platform. They've been very thoughtful about standardizing across their business rather than having people using what is a fairly large platform with lots of features in different ways. So the best performing contractors that I've seen have introduced best practice and playbooks within the guardrails of the system to make sure that they've standardized their process. That then leads to the ability to standardize on reporting and get insights into what's really happening in their business, because they can trust the underlying data. So who are my best performing customers? Which contracts should I not necessarily focus on too much? Which contracts are actually losing money? Which contracts are then available for a price negotiation with objective data with the customer? And who are my best customers? Who should I be really doubling down on and trying to get more and more national coverage out of?
Yeah. So I guess your top 1% customers are the ones who are kind of using your system as much as it's capable. So they are getting out what they put in, essentially. I say the same about users of our software. If they go to the point of sort of customizing it to where they need, then they often get a much better experience, and they're sort of getting more in terms of gains. So you have lots of reporting sort of dashboards then, Jim, where people can kind of see these insights easily?
Yeah, we've got a full suite of reporting and dashboards, and it's a big opportunity with the agentic roadmap to make that easier to access for customers, where we want customers just to be able to talk to their data in real time and then receive visual outputs rather than spec'd and hard-coded dashboards or dashboards built from a dashboard builder, which we've currently got in the system. So there's a big opportunity there. I think going back to the best practice part of it, software companies have got a big part to play in that as well. We can certainly improve the way that we are a true partner for growth with our customers by being more confident about what best practice looks like, rather than being a software utility and a system of record. If you really get the consultancy right with customers at the start and goal set with them, you can be very additive in encouraging that best practice process and optimizing their workflows throughout their operation.
Yeah. Sounds like you consider yourself sort of part consultants, part software companies, which I love that. I mean, do you invest a lot in the sort of educational side of the business as well then, Jim? I guess you've got big resource libraries and what have you.
Yeah, we've got loads of content, both for our customers and for our internal teams, as we try and upskill everybody in the ecosystem. There's always room for improvement. There's, again, with agentic, there's big opportunities now for more playbooks, more best practice, more workflow training, and it's something that we've invested in fairly heavily from an L&D perspective. We've got a large implementation team; they're all on the ground, so I'd like to think we're as accessible as possible in terms of education for our customers and our own teams.
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it? So keeping your finger on the pulse with your customers. And it's easy in the early days when you've just got a few. I suppose at your size, it must be a bit more difficult to keep your finger on the pulse unless you're doing exactly that, going to site and actually spending time with these guys when they're having these problems, and you can sort of see exactly what's going on.
I think the one thing we've learned is that, as you keep developing a software system, it's not static, it's fluid. You keep releasing stuff in terms of frequent cadence of release, and implementation therefore never really stops. So it's an ongoing education piece. There is no endpoint where a customer is fully adopted unless you've stopped developing software. So as long as you keep developing, you have to keep adopting, and a huge part of that is the educational support you provide around the good stuff that you're building in the platform.
Yeah, it's no good building an amazing feature if no one knows how to use it or what they can get from it. Yeah, I think the future is moving so fast at the minute. I don't know about you. I think technology is going incredibly ridiculously fast, really. AI scheduling, we've got photo recognition, real-time everything. It feels like we're just getting started in this space. Was there an aha moment when you realized AI wasn't just hype, it was genuinely going to change the playing field for your customers?
Yeah, I think my business partner and our CTO, Yak, was banging my door down about AI about 3 years ago, saying we've got to get going, and he's always had a skill for seeing over the hill about what's coming next, and he's always kept very close to emerging tech. So I'm really lucky in that way that there's somebody in the business who's thinking about these things before I have to think about them. And when he really starts shouting about things, I'll take notice. So we were actually out visiting our development office in Vietnam when a version of GPT was launched. And we decided quite quickly to test this on ourselves. So we thought we'll build our own support chatbot, like a lot of software companies have done. It was the obvious lowest hanging fruit for us to use ourselves as the agentic guinea pig for Joblogic before we produced anything for our customers. So that was a really insightful and valuable project for us. We started to understand the fact that we can't just deploy an agent. There's so much work to do in terms of data storage, quality of data hygiene, and then QC. So using our excellent support team to QC the agent that we built for support chat. And that project went on for about a year, sort of refinement and iteration. And now we're in a place where we've learned loads, we've got a really good score, and we can start to take those learnings and put them into the platform for the benefit of the customers. But I'd say the urgency and the light bulb came on about 2.5, 3 years ago for us.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I think you're ahead of the curve on that one. I've seen these AI agents can do really well when you just constantly sort of tending them. You can't just sort of park them and leave them. You have to be kind of teaching them all the time. Is that your experience too?
Yeah, the QC is a huge part of it, as is the historical contextual data that you need to train an agent. So that's one thing where I suppose we have a good advantage over some competitors, is that we've been around for a long time. We've got lots of historical data that can be contextualized and we can increase the velocity of release of agents relative to other software companies because we've got this historic data set, and we understand how to store data and how to leverage it for the benefit of the agent that we're building.
Yeah. And how does it feel kind of operating in an industry where there are risks, and AI hallucinations can kind of worry any software developer, I suppose. But do you find that you're having to have a sort of tighter control over the AI in this case?
Yeah, and since we took investment from Vista in 2025, we are deploying funds and investment into our own agentic factory at Joblogic, but also making sure that we are belt and braces on governance. As a larger software company now with good backing, we're in a fortunate position where we can afford to invest in these things and make sure that when we're developing using the leading edge agentic technology, that we've got both our governance and our R&D teams fully resourced to make sure that we do a good job of it.
Oh, it's incredible that you guys have you're building out like an AI team to do these kind of things. And I know you've got an AI centric roadmap for Joblogic. What is it that you see as being like the most exciting practical use of AI in the sort of years to come, Jim?
I think for our customers, it's going to be helping them to solve the challenge of skilled engineer shortage. So doubling down on what the traditional software platform has already done in terms of assisted scheduling into full dynamic agentic scheduling. We've got the opportunity to give the engineers even more help on the ground in terms of prediction on fix and historic data about methods for fix. And that can speed up their time on site. And then in the back office, we've got the opportunity to act as a force multiplier for the people that are doing loads of really great hard work in the back office, keeping customers happy. A lot of the customer comms can be reduced with agentic agents. We can help people in the back office to rapidly check for compliance and to check for issues that might otherwise be buried in a notes section of a job or inside a form where they have to go and search for information. We can flag up exceptional data very quickly, and we can automate some of the stuff that they are just clicking around doing that they could do in their sleep. So chasing up quotes, sending out invoices, monitoring margin on jobs, and to act as a force multiplier for the people that in these back offices so they can spend more of their time solving more complex issues and having more customer face time. And they've got very demanding customers. These are people with buildings. They've got people in these buildings that demand that the buildings are comfortable and, most importantly, safe. Our contractors are doing a really important job, and a lot of that is the comms that they have with their customers, and we can free more of their more trivial, predictable back office time up so they can spend more time speaking with their customers and delivering a great service.
I love that, Jim. And I often think it would be nice if I could multiply myself in business, and you're doing exactly that for your customers. You're multiplying them as a force. Fantastic. And are you focusing on sort of several key features then? You mentioned the scheduling. I know AI scheduling can do some amazing things. And this force multiplier, is that, are we talking there about kind of more insights into what's happening? So like bringing things into the visibility of the staff that they might not otherwise have been aware of?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One is being able to talk to your data. So as I said at the start, there's lots of dashboards and reports in Joblogic, but the ability to talk to your data in real time and then change your query on a prompt, I think will be a big game changer for our customers. They want the information there and then right now, and it can be quite frustrating if let's say you've had a dashboard built and there's a piece of data that you think is now really important that is missing from that, and you've got to go and add it in and recompile your dashboard. I'd like to be able to, for our customers very quickly, to be able to talk to their data in real time. Then we've talked about there's things that they're doing that they don't really need to be doing anymore. For example, if you've sent a quote to a customer, why can't you automate the chasing of that quote? Why can't we automate the chasing of that quote to be into a job, and then for that job to be automatically planned within some guardrails and parameters that a human would do? And as long as we've got the buy-in for our customers to be QCing these agents, they get better and better every day. And then the users in the back office are sitting there saying, right, I've now got time to deal with exceptional, more complex issues and be more customer facing. They tend to get a lot of noise. They're in busy environments. They can be fairly stressful. And right now they're doing a great job with the tools that they've got, but we can really leverage the power of agentic to give them some quality of life back. I think it would be a nice outcome.
Yeah. Sounds like you're making your customers superhuman. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the direction of field service management, Jim. What do you think companies aren't doing, that they're maybe not preparing for that's going to be happening over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think that businesses across all industries, to be honest, I don't think it's just in our industry. I think that there's more education that needs to be done in terms of the opportunity and the power of the agentic technology that's available. So I'd say that as a general statement. And then where I see our job is to take the stress away from our customers by doing that thinking for them. In collaboration, obviously, brainstorming and saying what workflows have we identified when we've mapped your workflows that are a bottleneck or that are predictable and repeatable that we can work with you on. But we want to take that stress off them so they can carry on winning customers, looking after their customers, recruiting their engineers, and QCing their own engineering quality, which is their ultimate job. That's what they're there to do. And we want to be that tech partner that says, I know you're hearing a lot of noise about agentic right now. We're going to educate you as to the opportunities, but leave the work to us. We're going to deliver it for you. And I think if we can do that, and we can do that at speed, our customers are going to be delighted with that level of service. And they can carry on growing their businesses as they've always done.
That's such a great approach because, you and I know your customers will be very, very busy people. Our customers are very busy people. They rarely have time to sit down and do anything. So if you can take that off their hands, that's a real sell. So if there's all these possibilities of things that you can be building with AI and all the other technologies that are coming, how do you decide what Joblogic builds next?
So we've got a customer advisory board, and we're meeting with lots of customers at the moment. We're actively doing lots of workshops, and we're doing 2-day workshops with some of our biggest customers right now. And the idea is that we will map their workflows, look for repeatable opportunities across our customer cohorts.
Hey everyone, Future Paul here. Pardon the interruption. I recorded this podcast back with Jim in March 2026, and now in June 2026, I can tell you that Joblogic has already blazed ahead with their agentic roadmap, and agents are live across the workflow. What amazing pace of development. So great for all of Joblogic's customers. Now back to past Paul and Jim.
In terms of process, a lot of the smaller companies do the same things that the bigger companies do. There is a bit of a change in FM as you grow a business and you end up becoming the main contractor for large clients. And I can talk about what that change looks like. It's an element of extra governance that probably doesn't come in when you're a smaller business and you might be contracting to a larger contracting business. But I think for us, we need to really understand these workflows, understand how many of these workflows we can use agentic to alleviate, and then make those as generic as possible for the benefit of the whole customer base. And we're busy doing that right now. So a lot of research going on. We've already got lots of ideas for obvious wins around voice agents and scheduling and compliance monitoring. But we want to validate those with the customers and then turn them into product quickly.
Yeah. Do you have like a public roadmap, Jim? Do you have somewhere where your clients can kind of vote on the things they want or anything like that? Or are you more sort of directly speaking to the customers and finding out firsthand?
Well, we're doing a bit of both, really. So we've recently launched a community page where customers can vote on roadmap. Our roadmap at the moment, we're still in consultative stage with our largest customers. So there's going to be more colour added to that. That's going to be updated quite soon. So we're still in a bit of an R&D phase, and we've got our community page, and we just need to merge those two together with the latest thinking. So a little bit of work to do there.
Yeah. I remember when we were really small, the roadmap was very clear because you'd have 1 or 2 people asking for things. Now with lots of customers, it's much harder. And for you, it must be very difficult because sometimes the loudest customer can sometimes kind of make a lot of noise and make you think, oh, should we reevaluate this? Is this more important than we realized? I imagine your sort of scale, it's kind of like a more, like you say, more of a community sort of feel. Like you kind of try and give all the voices together and sort of figure out what people want in aggregate rather than just this one customer or 2 customers that kind of ask for it. Yeah. And how do you stay close to the real problems your customers are facing as you grow, Jim? Because I mean, you've grown the company to over 400 employees now, which is an incredible achievement. Are you still able to sort of feel that personal, those first personal kind of relationships and pains that you felt when you first started?
Yeah, we've got a strapline for Joblogic, which is grow with Joblogic. For us, it's personal, and that wasn't just meant to be a throwaway
That's
statement.
nice.
We sat down and figured it out with our senior management team and said, what's important to us? And um, the part of the job that I've always enjoyed, I'm from a sales background, and then ended up becoming CEO of the business. But the part of the job that I've most enjoyed and still enjoy the most is being in front of customers or prospects. That's the bit where I get most excited. Um, and I still do a lot of that. I don't know whether I do too much of it, but I really enjoy it. So I don't think I'm ever going to change too much in that respect. Our senior team is on the ground in the UK. This is where I think there's a bit of a differentiator between us and some of our other competitors that their senior management team might be in the US or in other geos. We are on the ground in the UK. We've created a customer advisory board. We've done multiple customer events, particularly last year. We were really good on events. We had some big events for our customers. We've made sure that we're physically available as well. So we're HQ in Birmingham. We've got an office in Bristol, and we've just opened a London office. So we're really committed to being physically on the ground with space available to meet customers as well. And obviously we go out to customer sites a lot. But me personally, I've still got a lot of customers that are not afraid to pick up the phone or drop me a direct LinkedIn or email. And I'd like to think that I'm as quickly responsive as possible to our customers. A lot of them know me personally, and it's got harder to know everybody as the business has scaled. So maybe there's some people that I sold to back in the day that have still got my mobile number, but I'd like to think I'm directly responsive to people, and I love meeting customers, and I don't think that'll ever change.
That's really refreshing. Yeah. So I know a lot of our clients still have my mobile number and they'll ring me at silly times. I need to stop giving up my mobile number, Jim. But yeah, that's fantastic. I'm sure people are delighted when they get you on a sales call and you're still taking that personal interest in their business. Is there a customer story that's really stuck with you over the years?
I've been thinking about this, and there's a few. I think some of our customers, it's been great to see people that have potentially left a larger business 10 years ago and then have built their own FM company. So one of my first customers was a guy called Mark Wood. He was working for a company called Mid Essex Heating, and then he went on in his career and progressed around, and now he's built his own FM company called Ability FM. And I'm still in touch with Mark, and I loved seeing the fact that he set up his own business and won his own clients, and he's now scaling his own business. That's there's many stories like that, and I can't mention everybody, but that's just one example, and that's been multiplied whilst I've been working at Joblogic many times. Another interesting one was our old parent company. So Yak and I did the management buyout. We bought Joblogic from a company called Carter's, and when I joined Joblogic, Carter's had actually moved away from Joblogic and we're using a competitive system, which was a little bit embarrassing for me back in the day in 2000. They then moved on to other systems, and then 4 years ago, we implemented Joblogic, and I basically ended up completing the story. So the company was owned by Carter's. We bought it, we scaled it, we got our product to a level where a company of their size could trust it and get value from it, and now they're one of our biggest customers. So that is a real nice personal story for me. I've always had a real great relationship with the ownership at Carter's, but the fact is, back in the day, our product wasn't up to the scale that they needed, and a personal project for me was to make sure that at some point I won them back as a customer, and we did that, and that was a real great moment.
That's so cool. Yeah. what a thing to be proud of, all that hard work paying off into something so tangible. Like, yeah, these are someone I know, and I want them to sort of feel like they can be confident coming back to our platform. Fantastic. So customer feedback, as well as I do, can be good and bad. Is there a meaningful bit of feedback that you've ever received?
Yeah, I think we had some really, really great feedback from a large blue chip. This company was looking at a fairly ambitious integration project for Joblogic to be used by a network of contractors that they used. And we accepted this project. We were really excited about it. We delivered it on time. And one of the stakeholders said to me that this was the first project that their department had got live in around 3 years. And
Nice.
I was really proud of that, because he didn't tell me that at the start. And I suppose what I realised was there was an expectation from this really big company that a lot of projects fail, and we delivered it on time and on budget, and it stood up and it worked and handled hundreds of thousands of job transactions every year. And that was one that I realised at that point. This was about 6 years ago. I realised at that point that there were no excuses really. We had the tech platform. Our engineers had built something really good here. Now it's just about whether we become Betamax or VHS. There's an opportunity, and we could end up being a smaller company with a superior product that not enough people know about, and create a lot of urgency in my mind to really scale the commercial side of the business to match what we built in product.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, you don't want to be the product that no one uses because no one knows about. You've got to put your money behind that product you've already built and get it into as many hands as possible. I know you guys have always sort of stayed UK, right? You haven't sort of expanded too quickly into other geos just because I guess the reason is you don't want to sort of overextend yourself. Is that right? Or what was the reason for that, Jim?
I think the younger, more naive versions of ourselves did attempt a little foray into North America around 2015, 2016, 2017, going to a few expos. We picked up some customers organically. What we quickly realized is that the US market is, in terms of the service and maintenance market, is very different to the UK and the European market. The residencies are different, and there's this big hybrid, commercial, residential hybrid that goes on in the US that doesn't tend to exist too much in the UK. And we also realised from an objective perspective that our data in the UK was good in terms of our funnel. We knew in terms of marketing spend and sales close rates what to expect in the UK, and we sort of stepped back and said, look, we haven't had any institutional money, we haven't had any investment money at this stage. We were still bootstrapped as a business. Let's focus on what we know. Let's double down with our domain knowledge, our customer relationships, and leverage our network in the UK. And I think that was a good decision. At some point, I'd love to see Joblogic as an international brand, but for the short to medium term, we're doubling down on the UK and Ireland market and on our home market.
Yeah, it's obviously working because you guys are so well known, and like I say, I hear such good things about you. As the business has scaled, then Jim, like how has that changed you personally? Have you had to evolve as a leader, as a person? Has your mindset changed over the years?
Yeah, massively. I think there's probably 3 phases of a business leader, and in the first phase, if you're a startup or if like what we did, we bought a company when it was very small with 11 people and 200 customers. We were doing under $500,000 revenue when we did the management buyout. The first phase is operator, so you've got to do a lot of stuff yourself. There's no getting away from it. I was working on new biz, account management, feeding into product design, getting involved in support and customer escalations. You just have to roll your sleeves up and do the work because you've got limited funds and limited bandwidth and limited people in the team. As you organically grow the business, which we managed to do, and I didn't know what the rule of 40 was back there, which is a SaaS metric for software as a service, and it simply means that if you add your revenue percentage growth over 12 months to your profit or loss, if that number comes to above 40, you're doing quite well. So I didn't know what that was back then, but when I've looked back retrospectively, we were doing it. And as the business grew through organic profit, we were able to hire more and more people. And the next phase of leadership after being an operator is that you move into this, you're still operating a little bit, but you move more into building a team. And this phase is, I would say, is critical for any business that's starting to scale. This is making sure that you get the right people on the bus in the right seats, because you can't do it all yourself. And the other thing that you have to do is have an acceptance of some form of quality drop as you scale. You can't replicate yourself and your best people. Sounds arrogant, but if you've built something and you tend to be good at it, you can't necessarily just replicate yourself. So the key there is when the quality drop comes through hiring and growing, that you keep that as short as possible and you recover from it as quickly as possible and upskill people as quickly as possible. And that's something difficult to do as a leader. If you feel like you can do this better, or your best salesperson can do that better, or your best engineer can do that better, you have to let go of that a little bit and accept it, because otherwise you can't scale. And then I think I'm now coming out of that phase. where I've nearly built my team. I've still got a couple of senior hires to do in Joblogic that's going to materially add value to the business and add much needed experience into the business. And then I think the third phase of growth then is strategic direction and leadership full time, because you've got the team, they're executing, you're not operating anymore. You are leading the business, leading the culture of the business. And in many ways, I think then once you've assembled your senior team, you sort of have to act as chief psychology officer and make sure that the culture's great, everybody's rubbing along together well, everybody's doing something, to coin a phrase, to make the boat go faster in the right direction. And the last thing I'd say is one of the when you start a business and you're an operator, as you said about your roadmap at the start, as a small business back then, it was very clear what to do. That clarity on what to do becomes more vague and more grey over time. So one of the biggest things you have to do is decide what not to do. When there's loads of opportunities, like going to the US versus doubling down on the UK, for example, if you do something and it doesn't work, fail quickly, walk back from it and carry on doing what you're good at. So deciding not what to do is at scale is in some cases more important as deciding what to do.
That's incredibly self-aware and also incredibly difficult to go from the operator to the manager and the builder, like you say, building the team. I imagine that's been quite a journey, and it kind of comes in different phases, like you say. So I didn't realize you come from a sales background, Jim. So that's even more fascinating to me. I imagine you love getting on the calls and closing the deals. Now you've got other people to do that. That's quite a change. So what do you think your legacy is going to be? Or would you like your legacy to be in this industry, Jim?
Well, we're in a race. We need to become the first agentic field service management platform in Europe, and I want to achieve that, plant my flag and say that we did it. I want to see Joblogic as an international brand as well as a UK and Irish brand. We've got work to do there, but as I said, in the short to medium term, we're doubling down on the current market. And I really want to know that when people have left this business or they go to do other things in their career in the future, that they enjoyed working here. It matters to me whether people enjoyed it. A lot of great people have given up a lot of time for Joblogic, and I wouldn't sleep well at night if I didn't think that they'd enjoyed the journey. Maybe not every day, some days are stressful, but overall that they said that I set a good culture in the business, one where you weren't micromanaged, you were free to innovate, and you were free to fail quickly and to realize your own career progression. And then I suppose, as importantly to my customers, the legacy that I'd like to leave is that this software platform, Joblogic, it wasn't just a utility, it wasn't just a system of record. They were a true partner for growth, and they were always pushing on the edge of any leading tech that emerged. And in the future, if everybody said those things about me, I'd be very happy. But there's a lot of work to do to make that a reality.
That's such a nice message to finish on, and it makes me think like that strapline, it's personal. It really is personal for you guys, and you're trying to lift your clients up, but also your staff as well. Brilliant, refreshing, very refreshing attitude. So love everything about what you just said there. Well, thanks so much for the interview, Jim. I do hope that you guys are the first to build this AI field service management tool, which it sounds like you are streets ahead of the competition already. So I'm very excited to see where you go. And thank you so much for the interview. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Paul, it's been great. Really interesting to talk to you. Good luck with your business as well. We're going to stay in touch and see how each other are getting on, but really appreciate the opportunity to talk about Joblogic, our industry, and our customers.
Thank you so much, Jim. Catch you later.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this content. I hope you got something out of it. If you know anyone else who is affected by this topic, please forward this on to them. If you've got a hot topic you'd like to discuss, please get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. Let's keep this conversation going, and we'll see you next time.